Are you all able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Let's recite the verse. You can repeat after me. Sa evayam maya tedya
एवायं मया तेत्य
yogah proktah puratanah
योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः
bhaktosi me sakha cheti
भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति
rahasyam hi etad uttamam.
रहस्यं हे एतत् उत्तमम्
Sa evayam maya tedya
स एवायं मया तेद्य
yogah proktah puratanah
योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः
bhaktosi me sakha cheti
भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति
rahasyam hi etad uttamam.
रहस्यं हे यत्तत् उत्तमम्
Sa evayam maya tedya
स एवायं मया तेद्य
yogah proktah puratanah
योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः
bhaktosi me sakha cheti
भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति
चेति
rahasyam hi etad uttamam.
रहस्यं हि एतत्
एतद्
उत्तमम्
उत्तमम्
Anyone else would like to recite?
स एवायं मया तेद्य
Sa
स
evayam maya
एवायं
tedya
महातेद्य
योगः प्रोक्तः पुरातनः
yoga prokta
प्रोक्तः
puratanaha
पुरातनः
भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति
bhaktosi me
मे
sakha
सखा
cheti
चेति
रहस्यं हि एतद् उत्तमम्
rahasyam hi etad uttamam.
स एवायं
Oh, it's okay. Go ahead.
स एवायं मया तेद्य
Sa evayam maya tedya
योगप्रोक्ता पुरातनः
yoga prokta puratanaha
भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति
bhaktosi me sakha cheti
रहस्यं हे एतदुत्तमम्
rahasyam he taduttamam.
सायव्यं मया तेद्य
Sa
स
evayam maya
एवायं मया
tedya
तेद्य
योगप्रोक्तः पुरातनः
yoga prokta
योगप्रोक्ता
puratanaha
पुरातनः
भक्तोऽसि मे सखा चेति
bhaktosi
भक्तोऽसि
me
मे
sakha
सखा
cheti
चेति
रहस्यमिद उत्तमम्
rahasyam he
रहस्यं हे
taduttamam.
एतदुत्तमम्
स एवायं मया ते
Sa
स
evayam maya
एवायं मया
tedya
तेद्य
योगः प्रक्तः पुरातनः
yoga
योगप्रोक्तः
prokta
पुरातनः
puratanaha
भक्तयसि मे सखा चेति
bhaktosi me
भक्तोऽसि
sakha
मे सखा
cheti
चेति
रहस्यं हेतदुत्तमम्
rahasyam he
रहस्यं हे
taduttamam.
तदुत्तमम्
Anyone else? Okay, let's recite the synonyms. Saha,
सः
the same.
the same
The
Eva,
same.
eva
Eva.
certainly.
certainly
I am,
I am
I am
this.
this
this.
Maya,
maya
Maya.
by me.
I
By
me
me.
Te,
te
Te.
unto you.
unto
Unto
you
you.
Adya,
adya
Adya.
today.
today
Today.
Yoga,
yoga
Yoga.
the science of yoga.
the
The
science of
science of
yoga
yoga.
Proktaha,
Proktaha.
Proktah
spoken.
spoken
Spoken.
Puratanaha,
Puratanaha
Puratanaha.
very old.
very
Very
old
old.
Bhaktaha,
Bhaktaha
Bhaktaha.
devotee.
Devotee.
devotee
Asi,
Asi
Asi.
you are.
You
you
are.
are
May,
Me.
my.
by
My.
Sakha,
Sakha
Sakha.
friend.
friend
Friend.
Cha,
cha
Cha.
also.
also
Also.
Iti,
iti
Iti.
therefore.
therefore
Therefore.
Rahasyam,
rahasya
Rahasya.
mystery.
mystery
Mystery.
He,
he
He.
certainly.
certainly
Certainly.
Etat,
etat
Etat.
this.
this
This.
Uttamam,
uttamam
Uttamam.
transcendental.
transcendent
Transcendental.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Purport. There are two classes of men, namely the devotee and the demon. The Lord selected Arjuna as the recipient of this great science owing to his being a devotee of the Lord. But for the demon, it is not possible to understand this great mysterious science. There are a number of editions of this great book of knowledge. Some of them have commentaries by the devotees and some of them have commentaries by the demons. Commentation by the devotees is real, whereas that of the demons is useless. Arjuna accepts Sri Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead. And any commentary on the Gita following in the footsteps of Arjuna is real devotional service to the cause of this great science. The demonic, however, do not accept Lord Krishna as he is. Instead, they concoct something about Krishna and mislead general readers from the path of Krishna's instructions. Here is a warning about such misleading paths. One should try to follow the disciplic succession from Arjuna and thus be benefited by this great science of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण पृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे. I read the translation one more time. That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you because you are my devotee as well as my friend and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. So, very sweet verse, one of the most celebrated verses amongst the devotee population. And Prabhupada gives a very strong purport to it. He says, everyone except a devotee are there. He classifies them as demons. So we talk about it later. But I just want to mention that these verses that Krishna is speaking, right from the 4.1 onwards, Imam Vivasvate Yogam, the positioning of these verses is very crucial. Acharya has pointed out very critically. So if you remember, the way the third chapter had ended, there was a question that Arjuna had asked to Krishna, that Krishna, what is it that, forcefully, even though we don't want to do something, but we are sometimes forced to do it. So there Krishna started talking about, he said it is lust only, O Arjuna. So, and then the way he describes lust is also very categorical. He says, Avratam Jnanam Etena Jnanino Nitya Vairina. He says it's the eternal enemy of even the Jnanis. It basically covers Avratam Jnanam Etena. It covers the knowledge of even the Jnanis. So lust is an eternal enemy, Krishna had said. And then the way it ended, third chapter, if you remember, he had said, Evam Buddhe Param Buddhva Samsthabhyanam Atmana Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kama Rupam Durasadam. He had said that actually knowing yourself to be transcendental to your senses, to mind and intelligence. Steady the mind by deliberate, spiritual intelligence. And then he says, by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Jahi Shatrum Mahabaho Kama Rupam Durasadam. So that's how it has ended. The third chapter, 3.43rd verse was the one that I just mentioned. So then right after that, Krishna starts talking about Imam Vivasvate Yogam. I gave this knowledge to the sun god right in the beginning of the creation. So what this means is Acharyas point out two very important things about this. Acharyas point out that this lust is an eternal enemy and it has been an enemy right from the beginning of the creation. It is not that somewhere after the creation at some point the lust started getting manifested and that's where people started getting corrupt. Lust has been an eternal enemy right from the beginning of the creation itself, and therefore Krishna is nailing down this point that right in the beginning of this creation I had given this knowledge to how to conquer lust, and that same knowledge Krishna is saying that I'm going to give it to you today, Arjuna. So the other point Acharyas point out about this verse, Imam Vivasvate Yogam, is that this knowledge, sometimes people say that, okay, this Bhagavad Gita, so why do we need to read this? This is 5,000 years old, and this is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. How is it relevant to me? So Acharyas point out that this Gita is an eternal, timeless knowledge. If you see, Arjuna and Krishna, the timing of this, the speaking of Bhagavad Gita is towards the end of Treta, right before, I'm sorry, the end of, towards the end of Dwapar, right before the starting of Kali Yuga. And then creation had happened so many years, millions and billions of years before, not billions, but millions of years before Dwapar. So, and now Krishna is saying that this knowledge I had given to sun god that time. So what it means is that this knowledge is not some circumstantial knowledge that is taught on the battlefield. This knowledge is actually eternal knowledge. Now, Gita is not an ordinary knowledge. It is eternal, timeless scripture. It is relevant to everyone at all times. It is not that, after a few years, this knowledge will not be relevant. So these 2 points, Acharya said, is very important for us to understand. Now, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, actually, he gives a very important point. So sometimes what happens is, there are certain scholars who say that, the Smriti Shastras. So we have Shruti and the Smriti. So Shrutis are the Vedas and the Upanishads, and Smritis, as we know, is Puranas and the Itihasas. Itihasas are the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata. This is in the Bhishma Parva of the Mahabharata, chapter 25 to 42, if I'm not wrong. So they say that, these Puranas and the Itihasas, they are actually very late. The language that is used in these books, it is quite different from the language Sanskrit. Both use Sanskrit language, but the language itself, there is a lot of difference between. So the Sanskrit that is used in the Shruti Shastras, in the Vedas and the Upanishads, it is very ancient Sanskrit. But the Sanskrit language that is used in the Puranas and the Itihasas, that is very modern Sanskrit. It's very it came very late actually. So they say that actually these Puranas and Itihasas, they are not authentic scriptures. They were created later. They were invented by people. So they don't consider Puranas and Itihasas as part of the original knowledge that has come down from God. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati points out that, just as we have the body and the soul, the soul keeps changing the bodies, but the soul in turn, inside the soul, the person remains the same. Similarly, he says that actually the knowledge is the same that is there, but the body is different. According to time, place, and circumstances, the body may manifest differently. And the other thing he mentions is that, the Puranas and Itihasas, they were meant to be given to like a broader audiences. It was not meant for, the Shruti Shastras, they were not meant for a broader public. It was, very few, even in the Ramayana, it is mentioned that when this Putra Kamishti Yajna has to be performed, and Dashrath Maharaj, when he consults with Vashishta is the royal, priest in his dynasty. So he says that actually, we need a person, a sage who is expert in this, not the Rig Veda, Rig Veda actually. So he says that actually, there are very few, even at that time, that is in the Treta Yuga, he says very, very few people who are expert in Rig Veda. So he says that you go and get that particular Muni, and then, you request him, beg to him, and then he will come and he can perform that particular sacrifice. So even at that time, there were very few people who actually knew Vedas. So Vedas were not meant for, general population. But Puranas and Itihasas, they are meant for, broader circulation. So the language that is used in this, the Puranas and the Itihasas, that is more accessible to everyone. So it is not a very complex ancient Sanskrit that is used. It is meant so that people can, refer to it and they can benefit from it. Now, sun god, as we know, is considered to be very wise. Sun god, of course, he get Vivaswan, he gives light, but along with light, he also gives knowledge. So knowledge and light, sometimes they are correlated with each other. And we also know that sun god is so wise that even Lord Hanuman, so he was the disciple of sun god. So sun god is not an ordinary person. So actually, then how do we understand that the knowledge that was given to Hanuman was, was proper, authentic knowledge? That is because Krishna had, in the beginning of the creation, he had enlightened sun god. So the light of the sun and the knowledge of the sun, both are coming from Krishna. So that has to be understood. And then Krishna talks about that how this same knowledge is coming down in parampara. Evam parampara praptam evam imam rajarishyo viduhu sa kalena mahata yogo nashtaha parantapa. So he says that actually this same knowledge, is coming down in parampara through the Rajarishis. So Rajarishis are kings, saintly kings, and through them, so these saintly kings, what happens is, how would we understand that it is coming down through saintly kings? So these saintly kings are not, generally they will not become spiritual masters and they will give knowledge to others. But what would happen is they would make arrangements so that this knowledge is distributed. So it is mentioned that the Brahmins, they teach through Shastras, and the kings, the saintly kings, they teach through Shastras. So they will make sure that this knowledge, so they definitely get this knowledge, and then they make sure that this knowledge is given to everyone, and people follow this knowledge. And if someone will not follow this knowledge, then they will use their Shastras. Shastras is weapons. So now this parampara, we have to understand that it is not just a verbatim repetition of words. Parampara is actually the linking of the hearts. So the spiritual master, he lives according to some principles, according to some guidelines. And the disciple, when he sees the life of the spiritual master, he becomes inspired, and then he decides to follow the same principles. Now it may happen that when the disciple himself becomes a spiritual master, he may present the message differently according to time, place, and circumstances. This Desh, Kal, and Patra, it is a very important thing. This comes twice in the Srimad Bhagavatam also. And when Srila Prabhupada, I think he quotes it once from, if I'm not wrong, I think Prabhupada only quotes it. He quotes it from Manusmriti. So the concept of Desh, Kal, and Patra is very important. How that knowledge has to be presented so that knowledge is relevant for that person. The person can understand it, he can access it, he can relish it, and he can follow it. If you don't, if you don't pay, if you are not sensitive to the time, place, and circumstances, then even though we might be giving the knowledge to people, but people will not be able to appreciate that knowledge. So we know that in our tradition, there were things that were done differently by different acharyas. So for example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, at his time, there were certain Babajis and who were quite hypocritical. So at that time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur had said that Grahastha ashram is the only safe ashram, so everyone should follow the Grahastha ashram. So at that time, from our tradition, almost the sannyas ashram had completely kind of phased out. But when Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati came, he said that first of all, he said that we don't need any other relationship other than Krishna. That is the only relationship we need. But then what Bhaktisiddhanta also did is he reinstated the sannyas ashram. So what had happened during his time was if we look at the historical events, this Ramakrishna, but they were preaching very vigorously at that time, and people had got a lot of respect for the sannyasis. So Bhaktisiddhanta thought that actually the Vaishnav culture is the original culture that has to be followed by people. And he said that if we don't have sannyasis, then people will have respect for the Mayavadi sannyasis. So he said that let me reinstate. He himself became a sannyasi, and he also reinstated the sannyas ashram within our tradition. So acharyas within our own tradition had done things differently. So we have to understand that there is what we call as that there is an essence of the of the parampara or of the knowledge, and there are the externals. So there is a core that is there, and then there is a outer shell that is there. So sometimes what happens is the shell is changed, but the internal essence, the internal core remains the same. Similarly, if we look at even now, a few years back, if we look back, Radhanath Maharaj had actually established, he had pioneered the Brahmacharya ashram in the which temple is that in Mumbai? The Radha Ras Bihari temple. So he had pioneered that, and he started having this brahmachari. So he said that no, we should give training to devotees how to live a life of complete celibacy and a saintly life. So he started that, and later from there, initially there was some criticism about it, but later almost all the temples, Pune got it, then later so many temples had got, and now we see that even in America. So during the time of Prabhupada, almost 99% of the 95% of the devotees would live in the temple, so they would be okay. But after Prabhupada had left, after he had departed, most of the people would live outside of the temple, and there were so many grahasthas. So he actually institutionalized the brahmachari ashram, and then that became quite a success, and from there so much preaching has been done from. No, it all started from Radha Ras Bihari temple, then Pune temple, and then from there that became the hub. So Krishna says, so sometimes what happens is, sometimes um, the outer shell is changed, but sometimes Krishna says, Sa Kalina Mahata Yogo Nashtaha Parantapa, that internal essence is lost. That essence, when it is lost, then it has to be given again. So people just hold on to the outer shell. They forget about the core knowledge that had exactly what had happened at the time of Bhakti Vinod Thakur. There were these caste Goswamis, and they said that, we are actually the original descendants of Gopal Bhatta Goswami, and then we should only give initiations. Nobody else is actually authorized to give initiation. But they were not following any any principles, and they were not even preaching at that time. So the only outer shell was remaining, the inner core was lost. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur had to toil, he had to work so hard to reinstate everything. So Krishna says, Sa Kalena Mahata Yogo Nashtaha Parantapa. By the great power of time, this knowledge appears to have been lost. Now, this is a little axiomatic, in a sense that Krishna also says later in the 11th chapter, if you remember, very famous verse. He says, Kalosmi Lokakshay Krit Privritta. Time I am, the great destroyer of the worlds. And here he's saying, Sa Kalena Mahata. Due to the power of time, this knowledge appears to have been lost. So the acharyas, they point it out. They say that actually it is not that it is just a coincidence that this knowledge has been lost. It is actually Krishna's will. Sometimes Krishna would make this knowledge covered. He would hide this knowledge, because what happened is there are no people qualified for this knowledge. There has to be a basic minimum qualification for people to accept it. So that qualification is our sincerity. We'll talk about bhakti also later. So now we see that when Krishna talks about this, bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahasyam hi etad uttamam. So in this verse 4.3 that we are discussing, the word bhakti comes for the very first time in the Gita. Explicitly, Krishna has not used the word bhakti, although he had dropped hints of bhakti in the 2nd chapter, in the 3rd chapter, but he had not used the word bhakti exclusively. So now for the very first time in the 4.3 verse of the Gita, the word bhakta is used, bhakta and sakha. And now from here we'll see that bhakti will be repeated and used very repeatedly by Krishna. So we know that this verse, Prabhupada says that this, in the introduction of the Bhagavad Gita itself, that the introduction, I believe it's a 30-page long introduction, and that is a masterpiece by Srila Prabhupada. So there, Prabhupada quotes this verse, and he says that this verse is crucial for understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. If you don't understand this point, it's very difficult for you to understand Bhagavad Gita. Why? Because every subject, it requires a basic qualification to understand. If a person doesn't have that basic qualification, and if he just tries to trespass into that arena, and then he just tries to study it without having that basic qualification, what would happen is he will basically make a mess of it, and then he will, if people try to hear from him, then they will not get the real knowledge that is there. So that basic qualification is bhaktosi me sakha cheti. So even in the academic circles, we know that if someone, for example, if someone would present a particular theory or a particular study, so the very first thing that would be asked to that person is, what is your basic degree in the subject matter? Are you, do you have at least a basic degree in that subject matter? Unless that person would have that basic degree, he wouldn't, whatever he present, it won't be accepted. Right in our tradition, we have the example. So we had Drutakarma Prabhu and Sudapta Prabhu. So they had written this very famous book, Forbidden Archaeology, because Srila Prabhupada had actually inspired them to counter the evolution theory. During the time of evolution theory, Prabhupada saw that this theory of evolution, people have a lot of respect for it, but it is completely atheistic theory. So he had actually inspired them that you scientifically, disprove this theory. So, but what had happened was none of them had actually had any degree in archaeology. So Sudapta Prabhu, we know that he had a PhD in mathematics, and Drutakarma Prabhu, I think he had a degree in the philosophy of science, or I think it was history of science degree. So when this book came out, it was like a devastating attack on the evolution theory. All the evidences were there that this theory of evolution is actually obsolete. It doesn't, it is all fake. And they couldn't, the evolutionists, people who actually subscribe to that theory of evolution, they couldn't counter it. So what they did is they used a weapon. They asked, where is your degree? Where is your qualification? How can you even give it? We won't. So we know that uh, I think it was Sudapta Prabhu or Drutkarma Prabhu. One of them said that our qualification is our book, this book, but they said no, we won't accept it. So that what had happened at that time was there were few devotees who had started a university in Hungary. So they gave an honorary PhD to I think both Sudapta Prabhu and Drutkarma Prabhu, I think, or to one of them. And then that is how their qualification was established. So the point here is that even in the material life, people don't accept. So how much more it would apply to the spiritual knowledge? The spiritual knowledge is not just a matter of studying things and getting the knowledge. It is, as we all know, we would all agree that it is a matter of mercy. Without the mercy of a bona fide spiritual master, this knowledge it will not make any sense to us. Even though we may read it, but we'll hardly be able to understand anything. And that had happened to me. Before I came to I came to Vaishnavism or ISKCON, I had read Bhagavad Gita. And what used to happen was, I used to sleep. I had that desire to read Bhagavad Gita, but whenever I used to pick it up after like few pages, and I would like start feeling sleepy. But I had that lot of desire to read Bhagavad Gita. And later, when I was working that time, at my workplace, there were few devotees, and they started a group study. And so they didn't approach me. When I just learned about, somehow I came to know that there are certain people who have started a Bhagavad Gita study group at the workplace, and they do it at the lunchtime every day. I was immediately hooked onto it. I went to the room myself and said, can I join you? And then they said, yeah, you're welcome, please join. And from there, I actually picked up the Bhagavad Gita. From there, everything made sense to me. I completely understood. So in the association of devotees, reading Bhagavad Gita, if you read it in the association of devotees, you'll definitely be able to understand it. I have my own example in this case. So bhakto si mein sakha cheti. Why is bhakti required? Now acharyas, they also give a very esoteric understanding of this. They say actually that Krishna, when someone becomes a devotee, Krishna becomes so indebted to that person, because they explain that Krishna is omniscient, all powerful. He can have everything in this world. He doesn't need to depend on anyone for anything at all. But the only one thing that Krishna cannot have unless we give it to him is our love, our devotion. So when someone offers a little love, a little devotion, Krishna becomes indebted to that person. He thinks this person is so great, he's so nice. So he wants to reward that devotee. Of course, we know that the ultimate reward for a devotee is that we go back to the spiritual world and we live with Krishna forever. We don't have to come back to this material world. But even within this material world, Krishna wants to reward the devotee. So what the acharyas explain that reward is actually Krishna. He he gives the exclusive monopoly of this knowledge to a devotee. This knowledge is not an ordinary knowledge. This knowledge is actually the key of how to open the door of material world, go out of it, and then enter the spiritual world. So we know that first we have to open the door of the material world to go out. Then we have to open the door of the spiritual world to go inside. in between there is Brahma Jyoti. So people sometimes they can go out of the material world, but they hang in between in the Brahma Jyoti. They can't, they're not able to enter the spiritual world. So this knowledge is actually the key. It gives both the keys to us. It gives the key for us to open the door of the material world, and then it also gives us the key to open the door of the spiritual world and enter the spiritual world. Krishna says that very clearly later. I'll quote a few verses from Bhagavad Gita itself. So even if so Krishna, what he does is, unless someone, unless a person surrenders to a devotee, he cannot understand this knowledge. So this knowledge is readily available. It's not that Bhagavad Gita is not accessible. Even to me, it was accessible, but I could never understand it, and I used to feel, fall asleep while reading the Bhagavad Gita. So how bad is that? How good is that actually? So even though it was available to me, I was not able to understand it, read it. Forget about understanding. I was not able to completely read it only. So now, even if someone reads all the scriptures, still, he won't be able to understand. So Kulishekar Maharaj, we know that there is this book that is available to us, Mukunda Mala Sutra. That is, these are the teachings of Kulishekar Maharaj. So he writes a verse, very instructive. He says, Shabda Jal Maharanyam na bhuktaye na muktaye. So he explains the scriptures, Vedas, as Shabda Jal. Shabda Jal means it is a web of words, and Maharanyam, it is like a forest. Once you enter that forest, you can't even get out of it. Na muktaye, na bhuktaye means you can't even enjoy it. So there is no escape, and you're not even enjoying it. So that is the if you try to read it on your own without the mercy of a spiritual master, that's how it works. It happens. So Uddhav Gita also, Krishna says, Bhakti Sanjayate Bhakti. Actually it is devotion that kindles devotion. Unless you associate with a devotee, unless you surrender to a pure devotee, you will not get that devotion in your heart. So even in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says this many times. It's not the only place where Krishna says that, unless you become my devotee, you won't be able to understand. So we know that in the 11th chapter, that is like a hammer on the Mayavada philosophy. So Krishna says, Naham veder na tapasa na daner na chaijya shakya evam vidho drishtum drashtavan asimam yatha. He says, Naham veder, neither by reading the Vedas. So that is the Jnana Yoga practice. Na tapasa. Tapasa means neither by doing any kind of austerities. So that is the Dhyana Yoga. Na danena. Even if you give so much charity, whatever you give in charity, it's not going to work. Na cha ijya. Ijya is generally, ijya means fire sacrifice. You do as many sacrifices as you want. It's not going to help you. Shakya evam vidho drishtum drishtavan asimamyata. By these processes, you will not be able to understand me. He says very clearly this is 11.53. So how can we understand Krishna? He says right in the next verse, 11.54, Bhaktyatu ananya shakya aham evam vidho Arjuna. Only by unalloyed, pure devotional service can I be understood. Gyatum drishtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. Only by pure unalloyed devotional service can I be understood as I am standing in front of you. And once you understand me, then gyatum drishtum cha tatvena. Once you understand me in tattva, then you can praveshtum cha parantapa. Then you can go to the spiritual world. So again, this comes again in the 18.55th verse. Bhaktya mam abhijananti yavan yas chasmi tatvatah tato mam tatvato gyatva vishate tat anantaram. He says that even only a devotee can understand me. Bhaktya mam abhijanati. So many times Krishna says that, of course we know that right in this chapter it will come 4.9. Janma karma cha me devyam evam yoveti tatvatah. So janma karma, who will understand the janma and karma in tattva of Krishna, that is only a devotee can. Of course he doesn't use the word bhakta over there, but it's kind of understood that only a devotee can understand the tattva of janma and karma of Krishna. Nobody else can understand. Now one more point here is that sometimes people ask that why is it that Krishna liked, and out of all the Pandavas, of course all the 5 Pandavas were devotees of Krishna, and why is it that only Arjuna could come so close to Krishna? None of the other Pandavas were as close as Arjuna, although Yudhishthira is considered to be more virtuous, but still Arjuna came very, very close to Krishna, and they would spend time together. They would even, go together to the forest and do so many things together. Later in the 11th chapter, Arjuna tells what all he used to do with Krishna. So Jiva Goswami gives an interesting insight. So Jiva Goswami had written a book, Gopal Champu. So that Gopal Champu kinds of describes Krishna's life even after he left Vrindavan from the perspective of Vrindavan, that how his life that he had spent in Vrindavan, how it is, even later in his life, that is kind of, he gets that visions, it impacts his later life also, even in Dwarka and other places. So there he explains that when Krishna was in Vrindavan as a child, so he had a very sweet friend whose name was Arjuna, and when actually Krishna came out of Vrindavan, he was always in the Vrindavan consciousness. Excuse me. He's always remembering Vrindavan. So when he came out of the Vrindavan, and then for the first time when he met the Pandavas, and when he saw Arjuna, so that name Arjuna, it reminded him of his friend Arjuna in Vrindavan. So that's how that connection happened with, between Krishna and Arjuna. He felt naturally attracted to Arjuna. That Arjuna reminded him of his friend in Vrindavan. So that's how Arjuna was very special for, of course, all the Pandavas were special, but Arjuna especially was very, very close to Krishna's heart. And same for Arjuna. Arjuna also later, when Krishna disappears, that in the Bhagavatam, we know in the first canto itself, Arjuna is, when Krishna disappears, Arjuna is devastated completely. He's not able to speak only. He is so devastated when Krishna disappears. So that's also a very sweet pastime. So I just take a pause and see if there are any questions or comments or corrections about what I had said about this verse so far. Anyone would like to add something?
Prabhuji, I just want to say today's Chanaya Prabhu's birthday. I'm in their house. So maybe we can say Hare Krishna
nice.
to them at the end of your class. I just wanted to let you know that. Okay, Haribo.
Definitely. Everybody is in cake consciousness now. Okay, no comments or questions or corrections. Okay, let's move on to the next verse then.
Prabhu, today is Madesh's birthday and Govind's birthday too.
Oh, that's nice. We have so many birthdays. Yesterday also we had few birthdays. Today also we had. That's nice. Thank you for telling that, Mataji. Yeah, I know about Madesh Prabhu. I didn't know about Govind.
Who is Govind? I'm sorry.
In Raman and Anisha's son.
Oh, Raman and Anisha's.
Okay, so let's look at the next verse. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, let's recite this verse. We'll just recite it once and then we'll move on to the translation and the purport. Aparam bhavato janma.
Aparam bhavato janma.
Param janma vivasvataha.
Param janma vivasvataha.
Katham etad vijnaniyam.
Katham etat vijaniyam.
Tvam adau proktavaniti.
Tam adhav proktavaniti.
Okay, translation. Arjuna said, the sun god Vivaswan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? Purport. Arjuna is an accepted devotee of the Lord. So how could he not believe Krishna's words? The fact is that Arjuna is not inquiring for himself, but for those who do not believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead, or for the demons who do not like the idea that Krishna should be accepted as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For them, only Arjuna inquires on this point, as if he were himself not aware of the personality of Godhead or Krishna. As it will be evident from the 10th chapter, Arjuna knew perfectly well that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the fountainhead of everything, and the last word in transcendence. Of course, Krishna also appeared as the son of Devaki on this earth. How Krishna remained the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, the eternal original person, is very difficult for an ordinary man to understand. Therefore, to clarify this point, Arjuna put this question before Krishna so that he himself could speak authoritatively. That Krishna is supreme authority is accepted by the whole world, not only at present, but from time immemorial. And the demons alone reject him. Anyway, since Krishna is the authority accepted by all, Arjuna put this question before him in order that Krishna would describe himself without being depicted by the demons, who always try to distort him in a way understandable to the demons and their followers. It is necessary that everyone, for his own interest, know the science of Krishna. Therefore, when Krishna himself speaks about himself, it is auspicious for all the worlds. To the demons, such explanation by Krishna himself may appear to be strange, because the demons always study Krishna from their own standpoint. But those who are devotees heartily welcome the statements of Krishna when they are spoken by Krishna himself. The devotees will always worship such authoritative statements of Krishna because they are always eager to know more and more about him. The atheists who consider Krishna an ordinary man may in this way come to know that Krishna is superhuman, that he is Satchidananda Vigraha, the eternal form of bliss and knowledge, that he is transcendental, and that he is above the domination of the modes of material nature and above the influence of time and space. A devotee of Krishna, like Arjuna, is undoubtedly above any misunderstanding of the transcendental position of Krishna. Arjuna's putting this question before the Lord is simply an attempt by the devotee to defy the atheistic attitude of persons who consider Krishna to be an ordinary human being, subject to the modes of material nature. So we see that now Arjuna couldn't resist and he asks this question directly to Krishna. How am I to be able to understand that you gave this knowledge to the sun god? So Krishna and Arjuna are almost the same age, so now Krishna had been dropping hints to Arjuna and Arjuna has been catching those hints. So the first hint about Krishna's supreme position came in the second chapter. Anyone remembers which verse was that? We had discussed it. Okay, that is 2.61. Tani sarvani samyamya yuktasit matparaha vashehi yasendriyani tasya pragya pratishtita. So Krishna had said that, control the senses and fix your senses upon me. So, so that was very categorical that, I am the object of the controlled senses. Yuktasit mat paraha, on me. Very clearly he had said to Arjuna. Then again, the third chapter, he had dropped a hint to Krishna. We had to Arjuna. We had read that, we have discussed that in detail. Anyone remembers which verse is there? The third chapter, we just completed third chapter. Okay, so that verse is 3.30. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasadhyatma chetasa nirasir nirmamo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jwaraha. He said that, Mai sarvani, renounce all your activities in me. Sanyas Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa. So twice he had dropped hints, and this is a very clear hint. Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyam. I give this knowledge to the sun god at the beginning of the creation. Now Arjuna had been getting, and Prabhupada is very clear. Of course, he says that Arjuna already knew that Krishna is God, but he is asking for ours, for everyone else, for the demons and for the general public also, so that the position of Krishna is very clearly established. There is no doubt about it. So Lokatraya Upakaraya. So of course Krishna is doing Lokatraya Upkara. He is giving this great charity of knowledge to everyone. But of course Arjuna is also playing a very important role. He's asking very crucial questions for our understanding. He also asked in the 12th chapter, if you remember, that out of the impersonalist and personalist, who are more perfect? Very clear question, very directly he asked Krishna, so that there is no doubt that the devotees are the most perfect. So as we were discussing, Arjuna and Krishna are of the same age. So now the question is, how could he have given this knowledge to the to the sun god? Now, of course, this the knowledge about soul had come previously in the second chapter, and we may say, okay, that people may get different bodies, but the soul remains the same, and it is possible. Arjuna may think that, okay, it is possible that in some other previous birth he might have given that knowledge. But then the question comes, how is it that Krishna is able to remember that? because generally people, Arjuna doesn't remember his previous life. Krishna will say that in the next verse to Arjuna, that you don't remember, but I remember all my previous births. So generally people forget. So even if Krishna would have given this knowledge, how is it that he is able to remember? So that's how he is asking this question. Now this section of the Gita, it is like the diversion from the main flow of the overall chapter, until 4.15. So we see that Krishna will not talk about himself after this section gets over. Because Arjuna is asking this question, now the focus will come on Krishna. That how is it that Krishna is able to know? So we know that the main focus on Krishna comes from the 7th chapter, right from the first verse. Maya asakta manah partha yogam yunjanmadashraya samshayam samagramam yathagyasya tatchun. So Maya asakta manah, make your mind attached to me. And how make me? That Krishna starts giving about himself in the 7th chapter. So now Krishna is going to talk a little bit, not a little bit, but almost 10 to 11 verses is going to talk about himself. He will tell Arjuna that how is it that he had given this knowledge to Sun God. So this section, starting from 4.5 is where Krishna starts speaking about himself, until 15 is like the precursor to what is going to come later in the Bhakti section. Bhakti section starts in the 7th chapter. So the first 6 chapters, as we know, is the karma section of the Gita. So karma, vikarma, karma kand, and karma yoga, everything is described in the first 6 sections. Of course, the 6th chapter is focused on dhyana yoga. So, but the next section 7 to 12 is the Bhakti section of the Gita. So this is like a precursor of what is going to come. And now Krishna is going to talk about his supreme position. So let me take a quick pause and see if there are any questions or comments or corrections about what I have just said. If there are no questions, then I have a question for everyone. So my question is, Prabhupada writes that Arjuna already knew that Krishna is the supreme person. Where is it revealed that Arjuna already knew the supreme position of Krishna? Prabhupada gives a hint also. He puts in the chapter number, that as in the purport, Prabhupada says, as described in this chapter.
Is
Where
it the
is
10th chapter?
Yeah, 10th chapter. So
Yeah.
which verse?
Where he says that Asito Devala, he's saying, even though he knows, he's trying
Right.
to prove that.
Right.
Right? Yeah.
So right after the Chaturshloki gets over,
Yeah.
Arjuna starts speaking. 10.12 and 13, he speaks. He says, Param Brahma Param Dhama Pavitram Paramam Bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Devyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum. And then it says, Ahuswam Rishya Sarve Deva Rishir Naradas Tatha Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishime. He says that actually I have heard this, you are Param Brahm, you are Param Dham, you are Pavitram Paramam Bhavan. All of this, I have heard this from many different sages, Ahustvam Rishya Sarve, so many different rishis have. So when the Pandavas, they were in the forest, when they were in the Agyatwas, not basically in the exile, that time they were meeting different, just as Lord Ram, when he was in Dantakaranya, he was meeting so many different. So he took this as an opportunity to go and meet all these sages. Similarly, Pandavas, they were regularly meeting different sages. So he gives the names of very prominent personalities. Ahustam Rishya Sarve, Deva Rishir Naradas. So he has heard it from Narada. Narasad, Asito, Asita is also one of the very prominent personality in the whole universe. Asito, Devalo, and Vyasa. Vyas also had told Arjuna. So Vyas is the authority. He is the person who is giving us all the Vedas. So he has heard this from these prominent personalities, and not just these. And then Krishna says that Swayam Chaiva Bravishimi, that you are now telling this yourself to me, O Krishna. So I completely accept what you are saying to me. So that in the 10th chapter, those prayers that Arjuna does, Asito Devalo Swayam Chaiva Bravishime, Sarvam etadritam manya yanman vadasi keshava nahite bhagwan vyaktim vidur deva nadanava. I accept everything that you say completely. I accept it. I have no doubt about it. that there is no one greater than you, no demigod, no devata, no rakshasa, asito devala swayam sarvamidam. Yanmam vadasi keshava, nahite bhagwan vyaktim vidur deva na danava, swayam evat atmanam. I'm missing the verses now, but he says that only, and then he also says that nobody can understand you, Krishna, but only you can understand yourself. Also, although Krishna does say that my devotees can understand me, but Acharyas say that devotees can definitely understand Krishna, but Krishna's glories are unlimited. Even the devotees cannot fully understand the glories of Krishna. They cannot fully know the glories of Krishna. So there Arjuna says that only you know yourself completely, and therefore he asks Krishna that you please tell me, how am I supposed to see you in this material world? And there the Vibhuti Yoga comes in the 10th chapter. Then Krishna starts speaking his own glories to Arjuna. So the very first verse that he speaks on his own glories, what is that verse? Aham atma gudakesha sarva bhutashe sita aham adischa madhyamcha bhutanam antayevacha. So aham atma gudakesha, I am the super soul situated in the hearts of all living entities. Aham adischa madhyamcha bhutanam antayevacha, I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all living entities. So that's how he starts, and then he speaks his glories to Arjuna, and then he ends that section very nicely. Achhapi sarva bhutanam bijam tadham Arjuna natadasti vinayatsan maya bhutam characharam. He says that actually I am the seed giving father for all living. Achhapi sarva bhutanam bijam. Bijam is the seed of all living. Bijam tadham Arjuna natadasti vinayatsan maya bhutam characharam. Nobody can exist me without me. No, even matter and spirit. Maya bhutam char and achar. Char means matter and char means the living entities, and achar means matter. Nobody can exist without me. So I am the basis of all existence. Sometimes we say that God is the greatest. So the idea that comes is, okay, there are so many different living entities, and the God is the greatest living entity. But he is not just the greatest; he is the basis of our existence. If God is not there, we cannot exist. So without him, nothing can exist. So that's how that in the 10th, towards the end of the 10th chapter, Krishna makes it very clear that he is not just one of the living entities, he is the basis of all living entities. So I don't think we have time to go over the next verse. So let me see if someone would like to, comment something or any questions or corrections. We still have 5 minutes. Okay, if not, then I think we can go to the birthday song. So Devi Priya Mataji, you have the birthday boy with you?
Birthday boy and the missus of the birthday boy.
Okay, so we need our singing crew.
Yeah. Where is what's his name? Pranath Govind. He's the best one. He has this
What do you
last,
mean?
Yeah.
Nandagopal is there too.
Yeah, Nandagopal is there, but Pranath does that opera thing, very high note in the end.
Nandagopal, the deputy, is there.
Okay, I hope you're learning Nandagopal from him now, how to go on that high note.
Nandagopal is not on audio.
Oh, he's not? I saw him on the call.
Yeah, he's there, but audio I don't see.
Oh, that's right.
No, I'm drinking. No,
Okay, let's all sing. Hare Krishna to you. Hare Krishna
to you. Hare Krishna, dear
Chinmaya
Prabhu and Govind and Manishi.
No, it's Madesh, not Manishi.
Madev, who? Who is Madevi?
Madesh, right?
Oh, Madesh Prabhu. Okay, I'm getting confused. I thought it was okay. Madesh Prabhu. Hare
Krishna to you.
You never take
birth again. May you never take birth again.
May you
never
never
take
take
birth again. Go Krishna to
Hare
you.
Krishna to you.
Go back,
Go back
back,
home, back
back
to
to
Godhead.
Godhead.
Go back
Back
home,
Back
home,
back
to
back
to
to
Godhead.
Godhead.
So are you 1, 2, 3? Should we do that?
You mean we could be here forever?
Thank you,
When we do
Prabhu.
that?
Thank you, Mataji.
So only Sudevi Priya Mataji is getting the cake. Mataji, please
I
eat on
know,
all of
right?
our behalf.
We would have all come there, you know. We could
You
have
are
had the
all
big-
welcome, Mataji.
I got a nice feast. I got cake. I got vadas. I got dosa. I got what else did I get? Paneer, sabji, and pulao. So, see, there's some advantage in living close to devotees.
Yeah.
Of course there is.
Yeah, more than one ways, but for me, I like the prasad too.
Well, now with Zoom calls, we are all at least in association.
Okay.
Well,
Let-
have a Krishna conscious birthday, everyone.
yeah, we'll let him
Yeah.
enjoy the birthday
Happy
now.
birthday to
Have a
everybody.
very nice birthday.
Yeah.
Yes.
So shall we do mancha?
Yes.
Yes.
Vancha
Vancha
kalpatarubhyascha,
kalpatarubhyascha
kripa
kripa
sindhubhya
sindhubhya eva cha
patitanam pavanebhyo
patitanam
vaishnavebhyo namo
pavanebhyo
namo.
namo namaha.
Anantakoti
Anantakoti
Vaishnavrinda ki
Vaishnavrinda
jai.
ki jai,
Ki
Srila
jai.
Prabhupada ki
Jai,
jai,
Srila
Jai.
Prabhupada
Bhakti
ki
Govind
jai.
Prabhu
Srila
ki
Prabhupada
jai.
ki jai.
Jai.
Hare Krishna,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a nice lesson, Prabhuji.
Nice class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.